Great. Well, I think we've hit a steady sort of mass for our engagement today. And just thank you all so much for joining us today. And good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you joining from other parts of the country. I'm Julie Chavez Rodriguez, and I'm the director of the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. And we're so excited to have so many representatives from state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. And really the opportunity to be able to work with all of you. This workshop is yet another reflection of the critical working relationship between our administration and our partners at every level of government. For a moment, just think about where we were as a country just over 1 year ago. In January 2021, before the president took office, only 46% of schools were open. The unemployment rate was 6.2%. Millions of Americans were receiving unemployment benefits, and less than 1% of Americans were fully vaccinated. American families were struggling to make ends meet, and you all saw that firsthand in so many of your communities. And that's why passing the American Rescue Plan was one of the first things that President Biden did when he took office. Together, we were able to vaccinate over 200 million Americans. We reopened 99.9% of our schools, added 6.5 million jobs, and continued to put people back to work. We cut childhood poverty in our nation to what is expected to be the lowest rate on record. And we also advanced climate change action or climate action in communities across the country. We've made tremendous progress during this first year plus of our administration. And again, we're so grateful for the important opportunity that we've had to be able to work with all of you. Now, as part of our efforts to grow the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, the president laid out his plan to lower costs for American families while continuing a historically strong economic recovery. He continues to focus on creating local jobs, lowering everyday costs for working families, promoting fair competition to lower prices, and eliminating barriers to so many of our communities as they continue to access these important benefits. Now, all of us deserve to enjoy in America's promise, and we hope that many of you all will continue to work alongside us as we really support our families and our communities. Now, states, cities, territories, and tribes have been on the front lines of our efforts to get more Americans to file taxes and get access to critical benefits that were expanded in the American Rescue Plan, like the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. You all are uniquely positioned to help your residents access these benefits because state and local leaders have strong bonds and trust with the communities that they serve. We are asking that governments help individuals understand all the ways that they may be able to access this relief, because this is really what our administration is all about. This was President Biden's vision of bringing people together to get things done, uniting the country, proving that we can rebuild America, and ensuring that we are preparing for our future. So thank you all again for joining us for joining us today, because together we are building a better America. So with that, I want to turn it over to my good friend and colleague, Jean Sperling, the White House American Rescue Plan Coordinator. Jean, over to you.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you to our amazing Julie and her tremendous leadership with our intergovernmental affairs team, which is just tremendous, and to Luke McGowan, who is particularly is our person from her team who works so much with us and on this particular project in coordinating the American Rescue Plan efforts. So I really want to thank everyone for being on. You know, we're going to get down to business because this is serious. I think we all know that, you know, something in government that we all have to overcome and do better at is that some of the most important programs, particularly those that could help the most vulnerable Americans, particularly those that could mean the most for having children get a fair start and be lifted out of poverty to more opportunity and a brighter path, are not fully utilized. Across the board, there is often people who desperately need these benefits that they are legally eligible for and do not get them. I think one of the terrific things in 2021 with the child tax credit in the American Rescue Plan was that not just the Biden administration, but the entire community of advocates and children's groups and nonprofits and faith-based groups, and yes, many local governments said, this is too important to not have as full utilization as possible. Now, to be clear, what had probably the strongest impact for the child tax credit on reducing child poverty in 2021 is that one, it was a lot larger. It's $3,000 a year for children 6 to 17 and $3,600 per child for children under 6 years old. But more importantly, it was fully refundable. So for 27 million children who did not normally receive the full child tax credit, they now, for the first time, were going to receive a full child tax credit. It is terrible, but truthful to report that half of all African American and Hispanic children did not receive the full child tax credit until the American Rescue Plan was passed and put in full refundability for 2021. So that is probably the biggest impact that we're having on reducing child poverty, but it's not enough because we know that there are families who, for a variety of reasons, have not signed up. And so there's been this spirited and effort, top down, bottom up partnership to try to make this a moment that we increase the utilization, not just of the child tax credit, but of the earned income tax credit, of the child care and dependent care tax credit, to all American families and to all American children who need them. Now, in doing this in 2021, one of the first things we did was that we were able to get, working with the IRS, them to put up the first ever non-filer portal for the child tax credit. There had never been a non-filer, simplified, easy access sign up for the child tax credit. We got that up, and that was an accomplishment, but it wasn't good enough. People rightly pointed, it wasn't in Spanish, it was not accessible by mobile phone. And so we, in working with Code for America, were able to put up a non-filer portal that we pointed people to that allowed them to sign up with Spanish as well as English and being mobile friendly. There is no question that helped, but we also have all learned a lot in the process, which is that that is necessary, but not sufficient. You need a first mile strategy and a last mile strategy. And the thing that is important with both the first mile and the last mile is that you need trusted messengers from trusted places to help do that. So the first mile are things like not just putting up, to us, it is not just putting up a sign, it is connecting somebody. It is getting somebody to realize that this benefit is something they could receive and letting them know how they can connect to a place where they can sign up for the child tax credit and hopefully for other tax credits that they may not be taking advantage of. The last mile has proved even more difficult. People often need help. For all the technology, for all the texting, people often need a person to talk to. Sometimes they have fear about signing up. They have particular personal challenges. And so we realize that we are in this for the long run, that this is something that we want to accomplish, this higher utilization rate, but we recognize it requires a first mile strategy and a last mile strategy and trusted messengers for both. Now, when we have looked what we have seen is that one of the top trusted messengers are local and state governments, or a benefit that somebody is already receiving. When people receive a text message or communication from someone they know, from a trusted messenger, it really matters. And you're going to see some of the learnings that we have had so far that have made that clear. We've also learned that it's not good enough just to send a text, that you have to connect people towards to helping to sign up. Now, when we came into this year, we faced a little bit of a choice, a little bit of an issue, which is, did we try to get people to fully file, which is the gold standard, or did we just try to get people to go to a non-filer option? I want to explain the difference. The non-filer child tax credit allows somebody to get the child tax credit in a more simplified application, but it does not allow them to necessarily get the other benefits that could be worth thousands and thousands of dollars to them: the earned income tax credit, the child care and dependent care tax credit, health tax credits. So what we decided was that until April 18th, until the filing deadline, we were going to do everything we could to help get Americans to fully file. And the way we're doing that for us is that we are sending them to childtaxcredit.gov. And childtaxcredit.gov is a website that we have created, which gives people all the information, and as you'll see, helps them to decide what is the best avenue for them to file. After April 18th, when we get into May, we are then going to say, okay, if you didn't do what is the gold standard, which is fully filing for taxes, we want to help you at least get the child tax credit and be aware that you could still file. So what we're doing today is that we're doing the first of 3 White House hosting with state local governments on getting signups for the child tax credit and other important tax credits that particularly help low income families. So our focus today is really on ensuring that people are doing everything they can to get people to file, to get people to childtaxcredit.gov, to ultimately a VITA center or someone on a phone who can help them file, and again, achieve the gold standard, which is full filing, which can mean a huge difference for the economic security of a family. That's our focus today. And we're going to go through with you a few examples from your peers who have already implemented plans to see what's happening and to show you the difference that it has made. We'll come back and do our second session in late April or early May, where we will talk about how we can use a lot of those same strategies to get people to a non-filer option. And then we will do a third hosting later, where we will talk about what have been the best practices in that last mile with navigators, counselors, what type of places, what type of experiments around the country have been most helpful for people who need somebody on the phone or need to go to a trusted place with a trusted messenger. But for right now, between now and April 18th, we are hoping that we can inspire you to learn from some of the practices here and to go forward and help people sign up. Again, the difference is enormous. For just imagine a family with 2 children who has not signed up at all. If they fully signed up between the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit, it could mean over $10,000 to that family. What a difference that could make for that family in taking the stress off and ensuring their children are looking towards opportunity and not poverty. So that is our mission here. That's the goal here. I'm now going to turn it over to the Treasury Department, to Julie Siegel, the Deputy Chief of Staff, who has been one of our great partners and champions, not just on the implementation, but the outreach of the child tax credit. And then again, you're going to hear from different state and localities who have put these best practices to use. And then finally, we'll We'll talk to some of the groups, some of the advocacy groups, some of the nonprofits who are here and ready to help and be your partners in getting moving on getting more and more families and children signed up for the child tax credit. With that, let me turn over to Julie Siegel.
Hey, everybody. It's good to meet you. As Jean said, I'm Julie Siegel. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff at the Treasury Department. I just wanted to start by thanking all of you for the amazing work you do for the American people every day. I'm frankly just honored to be here at this workshop with all of you. My role here today is to just take a second to briefly explain in a little bit more detail the tax credits that are available this year for the families you serve and how we hope we can collaborate on making sure that we get them. Let's see. So bottom line, and Jean and Julie covered this, but the President Biden's American Rescue Plan put into place some very generous tax credits that are available to all families who are eligible. And so this tax filing season, there's frankly just a lot of money on the table for American families. And the only way to get this money is to either file a tax return or later file a simplified tax return. And that presents obstacles. And so we're hoping for your partnership in overcoming some of those. Okay, so what are we talking about here? We're talking about 3 primary tax credits. The first is the child tax credit. It's the full amount is, as Jean mentioned, $3,000 per kid for kids 6 and up, and $3,600 for kids 0 to 6. It's available not only to parents, but to guardians. So grandparents who are taking care of children are eligible and can file to get these benefits. As you may remember, a lot of families got part of their benefits in monthly payments between July and December. And I just wanted to thank all of the partners here who helped families sign up. Those families need to file a tax return to get the second half of their benefit. And families who didn't get the advance payments still can get the whole amount. They just have to file a tax credit. That's particularly important for residents of Puerto Rico who didn't, and some other territories who didn't have the opportunity to get the advance child tax credits, but can get the full amount if they file a tax return. So that's one. The earned income tax credit is another. There were changes. This is a long-standing effective anti-poverty measure that was expanded in the American Rescue Plan, and in particular, it was expanded for younger workers 18 to 24, and older workers who may have hit retirement, and workers who don't have children at home. Not necessarily that they don't have children, but children at home. So really focusing on those kinds of workers and making sure that they know that this tax credit that used to be quite a small amount is measurable. And the last is the child and dependent care credit. This is a credit that's meant to help not just parents of young children pay for childcare, but also others who have paid caregiving obligations. And also significant, also fully refundable. I'm a Treasury employee, so I have to caveat everything I say by every taxpayer is different, and this is not tax advice, but just to give you a sense, as Jean said, of the degree of magnitude here. A married couple with 2 kids under 5 who didn't get advanced child tax credit payments, with these payments together could increase their take-home income by more than 50%. So that's why we're sort of bugging you all with this today when we know you have crucial and very busy day jobs. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. The first is these credits are all fully refundable. So you can get the full amount of the credit irrespective of how much you owe in taxes. That's new, and it's really important to reach our lowest income citizens. The second is that claiming these tax credits will have no impact on eligibility for any other federal benefits or eligibility for state benefits that rely on federal funding, which I know is really important, and will not have any impact on immigration status, ability to get a green card, or future eligibility for immigration benefits. Okay, so let me just sort of proceed to what we're asking you to do, frankly. So as Jean mentioned, we had an opportunity over the last 9 months of 2021 to do quite a bit of outreach to get people to sign up for the advanced payments of the child tax credit. And we've really taken, and you'll hear this throughout the presentation today, the lessons that we learned from those efforts. One of the biggest lessons is that perhaps the single most effective thing in all of the outreach that was done was benefits agencies sending information about the child tax credit to their beneficiaries. And that makes a lot of sense because, to be frank, it's a lot of money on the table. And I wouldn't fault someone for thinking, if you get a text message saying that there's $6,000 from the government, you know, it's a scam. So trusted messengers who you are used to getting information about benefits are good messengers for information about new benefits. So what we're asking you to do is, however you communicate with your beneficiaries, to send a communication in the next few weeks with information about these tax benefits that are available. Now, with a big shout out to the tax administrators on the line, of which there are a few, thank you so much for being here. We know that you're not all tax experts. We as speakers are not all tax experts. And so the White House and the Treasury Department want to make this as easy as possible with reliable information for you. So here are a couple of things that we're going to do, and we'd also love to be in touch if there's anything else. The first is, and my colleague Marisi will show you this, she's the next speaker, we have developed, as Jean mentioned, a website called childtaxcredit.gov. And what I promise you today is we're going to do a couple of things. We are going to keep it up to date with the latest information if things change as tax filing season ends, et cetera, so that you should always feel comfortable referring people to childtaxcredit.gov, latest tools, latest information. One of the things that's on childtaxcredit.gov is some sample messages that the Treasury Department has developed with, like, our tax lawyers, et cetera, to make sure that they're correct, that you should feel free to draw from and edit, you know, as you wish, as is helpful. And then the last thing, and other speakers will speak to this later, colleagues of ours outside of government who have been partners in this work are available to help agency by agency answer questions, troubleshoot issues, share best practices, and are eager to do so. So there's web resources and also one-on-one help to help you along. One last thing I just wanted to mention is a note on timing here. So it's a little bit confusing. I just wanted to clarify, though Jean touched on this. So as many of you probably know from your own situations, tax filing season closes April 18th. So that's a date that people know in their heads. And so we are using that date to make one last push to get everybody to do a full tax filing through the resources on childtaxcredit.gov. But taxpayers can still claim all of these benefits in full until October 17th. Either if they don't have a filing obligation, they can just do it, or they can file for an extension, which will allow them to get all of these benefits. In addition, as Jean mentioned, we understand that there are some taxpayers for whom the burden, frankly, even with help of filing a full tax return, is going to be too much. And we'd rather them get some significant part of their tax benefits than nothing. And so in mid-May, our friends at Code for America, and we'll talk about this more in sort of our next convening next month, plan to release another simplified filing portal that will be designed to allow people to claim just the child tax credit, and will be sort of much more streamlined and simple if that's a better option for them. Okay, that's all I have. I'm happy to introduce next Marisi Vinton of the U.S. Digital Service to show everybody around the beautiful childtaxcredit.gov, which her team developed with a lot of gratitude from me. Thanks so much, Marisi.
Thank you, Julie, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marie Vinton, and I work at the U.S. Digital Service. So today I'm going to talk you quickly through our website and some of the tools and resources that can help you as you talk to your beneficiaries and launch an outreach campaign. So just a little bit of background on this website. So over the last 10 months, we've worked closely with federal, state, local governments, nonprofits, advocacy groups, individual tax filers, both new filers, non-filers, as well as frequent filers, to understand their experiences with the child tax credit and how we can build services to support them. What we learned is that there was some misinformation and some confusion around the CTC, as well as kind of some, not a lot of clarity and certainty around how to actually get it, how to file your taxes. And so what we wanted to do was to build a website that is easy to read at an 8th grade reading level, so super accessible language, user tested, available in English and Spanish, and also is a source to help people find their free tax services that they're eligible for. So that's our website. Welcome, childtaxcredit.gov. What I want to do today, we only have 3.5 weeks to help people file their full taxes, which is what people have been talking about. And so what I want to do is show you 2 things that will be useful as you launch, useful to all of you as you launch your campaigns. The first is childtaxcredit.gov/outreach. This is a section, Julie mentioned it, where you can find example text messages. Here you go, example text messages, example emails, we have some flyers, we have some tips on how to conduct a campaign. We have case studies and social media graphics in English and in Spanish. This is a great place to start for anybody as you're kind of gearing up to talk to your beneficiaries to encourage them to file their taxes. The second is, at the end of this webinar, we will send out state-specific URLs to help you track your outreach efforts. When you send out these URLs in a text message or in an email, it will send you to our navigator, essentially our tax filing assistance navigator. And what this does is this is where people actually find the free tax assistance services that they're eligible for. We ask just a few questions based on your household income level. How comfortable are you? Do you want some support filing your taxes? Do you want support? Are you comfortable doing it on your own or somewhere in the middle? If you want it in person or face-to-face or online or over the phone. And then you see the results. So this is a journey that if you send out a text message or an email, this is the journey that you would point people on and that your beneficiaries would go through. At the end of that, they'll see a number of services that they can find to help them file their taxes quickly and as straightforward as possible. So best of luck filing your taxes. Best of luck reaching out to all of your beneficiaries to help them file their taxes. And childtaxcredit.gov/outreach is the best place to go. Back to you, Jean.
Thank you. And one of the points, just to reemphasize, is that that the childtaxcredit.gov is dynamic. So in other words, we have, when we've needed to add something like a page for Puerto Rico, which is where the sign up is so critical since they did not get the monthly payment, we're able to adjust childtaxcredit.gov. When the filing season is over, as Julie mentioned, people will still actually be able to file. So we'll keep that option up, but then child tax credit will far more emphasize the non-filer option as well that Code for America manages. So that's why if you send people to childtaxcredit.gov, it will be updated to fit what are the best opportunities at that moment. So what we wanted to do now is go through a few case studies for you of your peers. And I think, to be quite honest, we want to make very clear to people that this can be done, and it does not require a massive lift to make a major difference. So we've got 3 case studies that we're going to look at: Michigan, Virginia, and Massachusetts. I'm going to start with Michigan and Detroit. Now, you might think that's biased since I'm born and raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and my younger brother founded and ran the Mosaic Youth Theater Group of Detroit for 30 years. But no, they just actually happen to be first on our list. And I'm going to introduce the deputy mayor, but I also wanted to throw in a thank you to Chelsea Neblett, the financial empowerment manager in the city of Detroit, and Pat Cooney, the assistant director of University of Michigan Poverty Solutions. I know the mayor will introduce them, but I want to personally thank them because when I went to Detroit, they were incredibly helpful, and in many ways really first brought to our attention the huge spike that came from their texting campaign, which we then shared with literally groups across the country. So with that, we're really honored to have the deputy mayor of Detroit, Conrad Mallett, and the floor is yours, sir.
Gene, thank you very much. I will get to my colleagues very, very quickly. They are the ones who, as you pointed out, have done and lead all of this important work. On behalf of Mayor Mike Duggan, the city of Detroit is very, very grateful to all of the work that your team has done, to President Biden for the American Rescue Plan. Remember, in 2016, the city of Detroit probably was at least in the top 5 of the poorest big cities in America. At one point in this decade, or the previous decade, we've had 40% of the people in the city under the poverty line. And people like Chelsea, people like Pat have worked diligently to make that less true today than it has ever been. But it's not done simply by wishing and hoping. We've used all of the power that we had from our census work, where we literally were going neighborhood by neighborhood trying to get people to sign up. We used all of the connectivity that we developed with our foreclosure prevention programs, again, recognizing the necessity, Gene, really in some circumstances, just to go house to house and introduce the possibility that frankly, life could be better, and that in this case, government is here to help. We've used this same energy around Sarah, protecting people from the hazardous consequences of eviction is something that's very, very important to the city of Detroit. And Chelsea and Pat will talk about that, but I urge all of my friends on this call, there is a decision to be made on behalf of poor people everywhere. And that is that the leadership on this call will make a decision that will impact that circumstance directly ourselves. The reaching out, the outreach, the non-judgmental approach to delivery of these services is critical. And with that, let me turn this over to Chelsea, who will then turn it over to Pat.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. So we're thrilled to be presenting our hard work in the city of Detroit with everyone on this call. In 2021, we made it a priority by convening a child tax credit steering committee with many stakeholders to ensure that all eligible Detroiters receive the credit. We hosted a child tax credit town hall with the mayor, our IRS partners, our expert VITA partners, where residents could call in and ask questions. We provided mini grants for canvassing organizations, so grassroots and nonprofit partners that went door to door to ensure that residents knew of and how to access the child tax credit. And then we also entered into a text message partnership with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So we really looked at our 2021 strategies and said, how can we do better in 2022 to ensure that everybody is receiving the full credit or the remaining credit? So some key learnings and increased enrollment strategies that we have been doing to maximize our success with text messaging. So you'll hear more from my colleague, Pat Cooney, about this, but how could we replicate that success with other institutions? So we were able to approach Detroit Public Schools, and on behalf of our Child Tax Credit Steering Committee, Detroit Public Schools was able to send a text to every single family in the school district. We also work to improve our last mile conversion. So really small design changes can help tremendously. So our outreach efforts were significant and they drove a lot of traffic to the website, but we weren't seeing the website traffic result in tax appointments scheduled through our VITA providers. So we did something simple, such as adding a light box, which helped our conversion rate tremendously. So don't be afraid to adjust your strategies as you are going. Also, we met families where they were, and this may sound, self-explanatory, but really look at your institutional partnerships. So we have a, great number of health systems in the city of Detroit, and we were able to hone in on our Detroit Regional Infant Mortality Reduction Task Force and really find where these existing partnerships with families and children are that are trusted messengers for information. And so that yielded really great results in reaching additional families that we were not reaching before with our child tax credit messaging. And also increase earned and paid media outreach to boost awareness. So we at the City of Detroit have a chief storyteller. And so we were able to work with our media services teams and really not just spread awareness, but tell people's stories. We went to individuals' homes, we went to residents' homes and talked about what the child tax credit meant to them. And all of these increased enrollment strategies have been very successful, and they take work, they take partnerships, and we have a really robust steering committee. So please, do the outreach on behalf of your city and your residents. It is absolutely worthwhile. And I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Pat Cooney at the University of Michigan Poverty Solutions to talk about our text message strategy.
Great, thanks, Chelsea and Deputy Mayor, and thanks to Jean and team. Chelsea, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So we had been working at this sort of grassroots approach at the City of Detroit to try and get people to a campaign website that we had set up to set people up with VITA tax preparers in the city. And we had a sort of a steady flow of traffic throughout the fall of people logging onto the website. It was sort of modest. And so that's what you see in this chart here, that sort of from June through August, you see maybe a couple hundred visits to the website per day. So we weren't getting quite the traffic that we wanted, because this type of outreach is a little bit like looking for a needle in a haystack when you're going door to door, because you're not sure who's filed, you're not sure who hasn't, and you're not sure who has children or their circumstances. So in order to get sort of cast a wider net, we partnered with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, which you'll be hearing more about today, of other states who have worked with their state agencies, to send out a text message to all state beneficiaries, people who received any public benefit, to direct them to our campaign website. So this is what you see. This is the chart that Jean was talking about before, where you see this spike. So throughout our campaign, we had seen a couple hundred visits to the website per day. We send out one text message and we got up to 14,000 visits. We got sort of 30 times the visits to the website. On a typical day, we would only book, maybe a dozen tax appointments. This is looking just locally at the City of Detroit. That went up to nearly 100 after we sent the text messages. As you can see, we sent another one out later in the fall, and we got even stronger uptake on the number of appointments booked, because, as Chelsea said, we made some design changes to the website. And so this is just to show, this was not part of our strategy at first. We thought it had to be kind of door to door, face to face, person to person, and that work is still needed for the last mile work. But in order to get people kind of through the door or get them some information about this, we found that this sort of text messages from a trusted messenger was critical. And so we're still doing that. And we're trying to reform that, our strategy, work on some language. We've gotten some help from Code for America on sort of changing some of our language around as well, to try and get even more uptake, because we still know that this is really critical. So we're doing more text messages here in the spring. for families that missed out on the monthly payments, that we know that the lump sum is still available, and obviously for folks who receive them as well. And the last thing I just wanted to say here is just how quickly we were able to set this up. So in many of your states, you may have something similar to this, where your state benefits office or Department of Health and Human Services is able to send out similar text messages to let beneficiaries know of certain changes or things that are coming up. So this all it took was an email to our cross benefits coordinator at the state, and within a week we were able to send out these text messages. So if you haven't gone down this pathway, we definitely recommend you do so. There's 2 people from MDHHS that are on the line today. They won't have time to answer questions, but if anyone wants kind of more technical details, feel free to email me. My email is cooneypb, cooneypb@umich.edu. You can send me an email. We can get you set up with folks from our state benefits office to answer any questions that you might have. So thanks again, everybody. I'm going to turn it back over, I believe, to Jean, who will send it to the next group.
Thank you so much. I do think that chart with the spike really has affected the entire perception of what is the best first mile strategy. So thank you. That is a chart that jumps off the page. Also, thank you to Chelsea on the point on the conversion, the little things that help people go from just clicking to actually getting to an appointment makes all the difference. So again, I think that was great to mention. And then I'm going to add a third thing, which I've heard across, which is once you get people to, you think, the last mile with the appointment, these are often people with transportation challenges, with work challenges. They do not always make the first appointment. And so having a strategy to go after someone who's made an appointment and follow up and make sure they know they still can come back a second time, I think we've seen has been a very helpful and important strategy in many places. And with that, I'm now going to turn to Virginia. Virginia's been doing very significant earned income tax credit outreach since 2007. We all know that our rates of earned income tax credit sign up are not nearly where we'd like them to be. And I think since it is a very similar group of families that need both the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit, lessons in one area I think are extremely important in all areas. So with that, I'm very happy that we have the Commissioner of the Department of Social Services in Virginia, Dr. Danny Avula. Doctor, Commissioner, whatever title you go by, the floor is yours.
Just Danny, Jean, thank you. Great to be here with you all. And I've been serving in this role as commissioner for just about 6 weeks now, but the last 13 years have been in local and state public health. And most of that time, before we got completely derailed by COVID these last couple of years, was really focusing on the social determinants of health. How do we help families achieve stable housing, safe neighborhoods, stable families, and stable incomes? And so, transitioning over to the Department of Social Services, I've just been so proud of the work that our team in Virginia has done to try to pull every lever we can to help stabilize families and get them on a path to self-sufficiency. So I'm gonna have my teammate, Jeff Price, who's the director of our Office of Research and Planning, talk more specifically about some of the EITC strategies we've engaged in over the last few years.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. And so I'll give folks a quick history and then some more recent updates that are more relevant to the discussion today. Virginia is a little bit unusual in that we've had a state law for about 15 years now that requires the Department of Social Services to send a notification to our SNAP, TANF, and Medicaid enrollees who appear to be eligible for earned income tax credit every year around the first of the year. My team in the data warehouse pull the data, do a little bit of analysis, identify that target population, send that information to one of my colleagues, who they then would send out these, we used to send these little postcards that would say, hey, you may be eligible for earned income tax credit. Don't forget to file your taxes. And if you need some assistance with that, we can direct you to the VITA sites or to a couple of other places where you can get some assistance. We've done that for years. We've never been exactly too sure how much effect that really has. And more recently, about 3 years ago, we started looking at using email and phone numbers for text messaging when we had them. We don't always have emails and phone numbers for everybody in our case management system, but when we did, we would try to use those. And then in 2020, we conducted a controlled or randomized assignment study. So we wanted to test this to see what effect do our messages actually have in a very controlled way, so we could produce evidence about what actually works and how, and to what extent does it work. So we did this controlled random assignment study in 2020 using email and text messages. We did it actually once for the earned income tax credit, and then we also did it for the EIP, the emergency impact payments, the stimulus payments. Some of that analysis is still going on. A colleague that we've been working with, Dr. Dana Manoli from Georgetown University, is doing the analysis for us. We've been fortunate to have a data sharing agreement with the IRS that allows us to send them our data, and a researcher like Dr. Manoli can do the analysis, linking our data up with tax filing information so we can see who actually followed through and filed a tax return and claimed earned income tax credit. So I'll mention a little of what those results are in just a moment. This past year, we continued to send notifications on things like the child tax credit. We didn't do it as an experiment. We just simply were sending messages out, again, saying, don't forget that you are eligible for a child tax credit, and here's where you can go to get some assistance with that. And then as we roll into this year's tax filing season, we're now using our case management system, which has the email and text capability built into the system, to send these messages out to the SNAP, TANF, and Medicaid enrollees in our case management system. We're also, a key piece of this, which has already been mentioned a couple of times, I just want to reiterate that coordination with our community action partners and with our VITA sites is really crucial to this. I think what Jean is saying is you need a first mile strategy, and that is for us identifying this target population and getting those messages out, crafting those messages in ways that convey a sense of trust. You are speaking with someone from the Department of Social Services. You can trust the information that we're giving you. But the last mile strategy of this is, if somebody says, okay, I want to file a tax return, but I need some assistance, you need to make sure you've got resources on the other end that can answer their phone calls and provide that assistance. In some cases, they can do it through a self-serve tool of some kind. We've worked with Code for America to set up some of that. In other cases, they need personal assistance to help with filing their tax return. So those pieces are super critical. What kind of impact have we seen? This study that we did on the earned income tax credit, as I said, some of the analysis is still ongoing, but we can tell you already we found a measurable effect from our messaging. Our outreach caused a 1 to 3% increase in tax filing just because of the messaging that we sent out. Now, in Virginia at the time our study was done, we had a target population of about 280,000 SNAP, TANF, Medicaid families in Virginia. With the expansion of Medicaid in Virginia, we now have about 500,000 more families that are part of our client base in Department of Social Services. And the expansion of the rules that Julie described earlier on the eligibility for EITC, we're now looking at about 1 million people in the state of Virginia that are potentially eligible. So for us to be able to increase that by 1% translates into about $23 million in benefits that could go to these Virginia families. So even a very small effect from your efforts can have very significant impact on families that need that money and assistance. We didn't, a couple of other little observations so far from our analysis. We saw a measurable increase from the SNAP TANF population. Those families that were Medicaid only, we didn't really see a measurable effect. We're not quite sure why that is. We're doing some more research to see if we can tease out what's happening with those people who are Medicaid only families. And on the stimulus payment, we really didn't see a measurable effect there, but we felt like we were already at about 90% uptake from the stimulus. just long-term, what have we learned? I think some of these messages we've heard now already, that having that contact information is actually quite a challenge. These populations tend to be a little bit more dynamic, and they move frequently, and staying up to date on what their contact information is so that you can send them a message, that can be a bit of a challenge. These online tools, again, I mentioned that we work with VITA, and Code for America has a great set of tools they've developed just in the last year for the earned income tax payment, and now for the child tax credit. They're really great. They help families quickly answer a few questions and then figure out, can I do this on my own using one of the online tools, or do I really need some assistance from somebody? And if I do, where do I go to get that assistance? Conveying that you're a trusted source of this information. We even tested some where the message might say, this is the Department of Social Services, or hi, this is Gloria from the Department of Social Services. We have actual staff member named Gloria that could assist with those questions that people sent back, and we found that that helps. So conveying a sense of trust is really a challenge, but it's a crucial piece to this. You can simplify the process. It's a little bit challenging, but there are a lot of ways you can simplify the process and provide people with tools that are very easy for them to use. And then at that last mile strategy, I believe, again, is coordinating with the partners that you have to assist people on the other end. Very quickly, as kind of overview of what we've done in Virginia. And with that, I will turn it back to, I'm not sure if I'm turning it back to you, Gene, but that's the Virginia presentation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Danny. Thank you, Jeff. That was really, really helpful, and lending that broader experience, deeply appreciated. I do want to just say one thing. We're running a little bit, not terribly behind, but please stay on a little past 1, because you heard Jeff talk about partnering with Code for America. We're going to have David Newfield, who is the Senior Program Director from Code for America, as well as a few other critical resources that can be helpful for you. So we're going to hear from Massachusetts now, but please stay on for a few extra minutes so that you can also see and hear some of the critical resources like Code for America that can be very, very helpful in designing, running, implementing your efforts. So with that, I do want to turn to the Massachusetts. Very happy to have the Acting Commissioner for Massachusetts Department of Transitional Assistance, Mary Sheehan, on. We've been very impressed by the text messaging campaign that they've had, both for the number of benefit recipients and for the number of languages that you've done it in, which is something we haven't mentioned here, but we know is essential, and really appreciate what you've done, and wanted to give you a chance to talk about it to everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Yeah, my name is Mary Sheehan. I'm the Acting Commissioner for Massachusetts Department of Transitional Assistance, DTA. And I want to thank the administration and all the other state partners here for providing us the opportunity to share what we've done here in Massachusetts. Our agency's mission is to assist and empower low-income individuals and families to meet their basic needs, improve their quality of life, and achieve economic stability. Programs we administer include SNAP, TANF, and employment supports. And at the start of the pandemic, we were experiencing a surge in applications and increased call volume as food prices increased and families felt the economic impacts of the pandemic. Our Massachusetts caseload has increased over 30%, and we now serve almost 1 million residents. So one of the ways we reduced call volume was to send out automated text messages to let people know that, we could receive their documents, that their case had been approved, or that their EBT card was on the way. And our call volume decreased, so we knew that individuals and families do use texting to get information from trusted state agencies. So in alignment with our agency's mission to disrupt poverty and support the whole family, we decided to expand these messages to help share information on additional resources and supports. So this included working with our Department of Housing to send information on housing resources and our Department of Public Health to share information on COVID vaccines. When the American Rescue Plan passed, we worked with the Massachusetts Find Your Funds Coalition and community partners to send a text message to our clients. We found that the text was highly successful with 100,000 households going to the website. It was also significantly cheaper than a mailer, or at about a quarter of a penny per text, and didn't impact our call volume. So we also knew that the child tax credit would be a huge support for our clients, and we're happy to be able to work with our partners to share timely information. Right now, I'd like to actually turn the podium over to Renata, a mom who received the text message, and she'll talk about the impact that it had on her family.
Can you guys see me? Hello, my name is Renata Senra. I live in Belmont, Mass, and I have 3 kids, the ages of 8, 5, and 4. I found out about child credit because I got a text message from DTA, and it said that I could be eligible for tax credit. I never heard of it before, nor did I think I could be eligible due to me being an immigrant. I checked on the link and I went on the website, and I found the number for Greater Boston Legal Services, and I called to learn more. Angela was very helpful. She helped me out fill out my taxes, and I found out that I have been missing actually my child tax credit and other payments. Soon I'll be receiving those plus my stimulus payment. I believe this money is helpful for my family because due to the pandemic, we didn't get a lot of financial help. The government outreach is important because people often don't want to involve themselves in the government, especially immigrants. It could be very scary and confusing at times. But hearing from the government that I could be eligible and help me reach out a little bit more. And I trusted the information I got from the DTA, and because I was able to speak to Angela personally. This money is for our kids, and I believe our kids deserve it. And it's for them and also for the moms. I believe every kid deserves this money. And as trusted messenger, I can help comfort families for these resources.
Thank you so much, Renata. And now we're gonna turn it over to Alana Davidson, who's our Director of Communications, so she can talk a little bit more about exactly what we did in Massachusetts.
Thank you so much, Renata, for sharing your experience with everyone today. My name is Alana Davidson. I am our Director of Communications, and I'm just going to very quickly take a moment to walk you all through how our messaging worked. And you can see our graph here similar to Michigan's. To date, we've sent out 3 text messages, each one to over 439,000 households in 6 different languages. Those were the top 6 languages for our clients. And each text message went out to our entire caseload, so almost 1 million Massachusetts residents. We decided we didn't, want to get into if they're receiving SNAP or are they receiving TANF. We felt it was important that this information get to everyone, and then they can share that with their neighbors, their friends. We know how information shares, and we also found that people were going back to these text messages later. So people were getting it, finding out about it, maybe not doing anything, but then hearing about it later and actually going back to learn more. Our first 2 text messages were kind of outside the typical tax season during June and September of last year. And our third one was actually a few weeks ago, this March during typical tax season. Each text had about a 17 to 24% click-through rate, with about 100,000 individuals going to the website each time. And these text messages went to the Find Your Funds website that our commissioner had mentioned the coalition here in Massachusetts has created to have timely and up-to-date information. One of these texts resulted in hundreds of individuals getting over $4,100 using Code for America's simplified filing tool, plus hundreds of phone calls to our local VISTA sites and messages for help. As you can see here, the Boston Tax Help Coalition, for example, received 300 to 400 calls, which had increased from 20 to 30 calls a week after our second text message. I wanted to also reiterate that this outreach did not impact our call volume. Our clients were able to see the information, go to the source, and knew maybe not to come to DTA directly for it, but we did have guidance for our staff so that they knew the best places to direct people. We also did not need any additional staffing for this. We saw this as part of our normal operations and used kind of existing tools, as our commissioner had mentioned, that we had built out around texting. We also included information in a lot of our mailers that we're doing. So to improve accessibility, whether someone's getting it through a text or a notice. So our summer EBT, which went to over 500,000 kids in Massachusetts, pandemic EBT last summer, as well as when the Thrifty Food Plan was reevaluated and the cost of living adjustment went into place in October for SNAP benefits. We included it in that notice to our clients. And then every year we do an earned income tax credit mailer. And so this year we were able to significantly update that mailer to include information on the advanced child tax credit payments, how to go to find your funds, and other resources for help. Some of the lessons learned: clear messaging in multiple languages is necessary. And we know there's toolkits available to help you find the right messaging. We found we need to avoid tax jargon, lead with the federal money people might be eligible for, let people know that they can have low or no income to apply, and that they can get this money even if they've never filed before. We also made sure, as the SNAP and TANF administrating agency, that we let people know that this does not count or impact their DTA benefits. And finally, I just want to note that there were a few other agencies in Massachusetts who also helped do this, as you saw in the last graph. WIC, our Medicaid department, and our elementary and secondary education department also was sharing information with schools and families. In closing, this outreach is essential in helping to ensure the economic stability of communities, giving everyone the opportunity to thrive. We know we can't do this alone, and so I just want to thank the Shaw Family Foundation, Mass Law Reform Institute, Greater Boston Legal Services, Children's Health Watch, and the entire Find Your Funds Coalition, who have been really supportive and helpful through this work. And if anyone has any questions or wants to learn more about what we did, we please feel free to reach out to us. I can be reached at alana.davidson@mass.gov. I will turn it back to you, Jean.
Wow, that was really terrific. Thank you. I just have to like do a very quick explanation on a couple of things there. One, I think cross enrollment is ultimately, we have seen to be perhaps the most effective tool possibly. That takes often legislation or work. We're working on that, but the cross building on the existing outreach, seeing how effective that is. Two, you saw the same spike you saw from the Detroit and Michigan experiment. This is not just a one-off. This really does work. I think the multiple language really is important and to emphasize. And I really just have to say, Renata, thank you so much for doing that, for being on the call. But also, what Renata is saying reflects everything we've seen so far. And when we talk about the last mile or the human touch, is that there often awareness helps, but people often have a question about their immigration status, or they're confused as to whether they will lose other benefits. They don't, not realize this is a tax cut. It doesn't count as income. Those things that often have to do with a fear or confusion can make all the difference for someone like Renata's family. So thank you so much, Renata, because I think you spoke for millions of people, and it's great to see you with that support that you deserve. Right now, I want to go to a series of external agencies to talk about the support that they've given. These are a lot of the organizations that have really been stepping up. I'm going to introduce all of them, and then they'll just go quickly. I'll go in reverse order, but the National League of Cities and Patrick Hain been a great partner with us from the beginning. The National Association of Counties, NACO, and their work with, and I want to call out the American Public Human Services Association for their work and support. And Rachel Mackey will speak for them. On the Economic Security Project, Kelly Smith will speak as the campaign research director. I want to thank Adam Rubin at the Economic Security Project, who's just played just a tremendous organizing role and has long pushed this type of interaction at the state, local level. And I'm going to start by turning over to Code for America, David Newville. Code for America has been just an exceptional asset to our country. And when we needed to make sure there was a more accessible, in plain English, mobile friendly in Spanish, portal for people to have a non-filer sign up. Code for America worked with us. They stepped up. And so, David, I will turn over to you first and then ask you to then go to Kelly and then to Rachel and then to Patrick. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Gene. Appreciate that. And greetings, everyone. I am David Newville. I am with Code for America. And as you've heard mentioned previously, you may be familiar with us from the Code for the Get CTC tool, the simplified filing tool. We also run the service getyourrefund.org in partnership with the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program to offer nationwide virtual tax prep for full tax filing as well. So you may be familiar with us there. And as you heard from everyone so far, outreach through all of you, thank you for your interest in this, is one of the most effective mechanisms for making sure that families can access all the tax credits that they're eligible for, these important tax credits. And as part of that, we learned that from our research last year, we wanted to offer the following resources you can see on your screen here from Code for America to help kind of support this activity going forward this year. One of the big ones is you heard Maurice earlier talk about childtaxcredit.gov and unique URLs. For every state and any locality that's interested, we can offer a unique URL that can help you kind of track the outcomes of clients that you send to the site. So you can see metrics such as, homepage views, returns that have been started, returns that have been accepted, estimated benefits that folks have received, to kind of really be able to track the impact of the work that you're doing to send folks to the site. In addition to that, we're also going to be offering on our website, codeforamerica.org, a page that will have a clearinghouse of resources for folks to be able to kind of access both materials on how to do this best, whether it's about, picking the right outreach mechanism, whether it's texting or paper mailing or emailing, or how to calibrate messages or doing, more sophisticated experiments, as you heard in some of the case studies, or just answering more basic questions as well. And including a map that will kind of track different activities. So different governments like yourselves can kind of see what other folks are doing out there, and if there are other people doing outreach near you or in other parts of the country as well. And then on top of that, we're also going to be offering individualized in group coaching sessions. Every Wednesday, we'll have office hours where we can answer questions for folks that you might have as you begin to get this started and get these pieces up. We heard a lot of really sophisticated and really excellent examples in the case studies about outreach, which I think are fantastic and a big credit to those folks. But outreach also can be intimidating, and it doesn't have to be super intimidating. It can be very easy too. We know you all have a lot on your plates, so there's very simple ways to do outreach mechanisms, as you can see here. You can tell we have all spring, we have all summer, and we have the fall to reach out to folks to offer, both simplified filing and different versions of full filing as well, even beyond April 18th for folks that are interested. We really emphasize, like, texting is the gold standard, it is the best one, but whatever path is easiest is always great. Getting started, if it's just a matter of like putting simple, straightforward language in a mailer or putting it in an email or even on your hold line messaging, that's a great way to get started. Don't get bogged down if texting is not something that's an optional available to you immediately. It's perfectly okay to just use kind of the existing modes of communication. And please do it as often as you can. As you saw from the case studies, like, continuing this outreach and repeated exposure has no downsides. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It helps reach more folks by getting the message out there over and over again. And you can catch different themes from back to school to thinking about the summer to the launch of the Get CTC tool later in May. All those things can be different moments for catching folks' attention and making sure they have access to these important benefits. So thank you all very much for your interest. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, and there'll be more information coming soon. And now I will hand it over to Kelly from the Economic Security Project.
Hi, sorry, just getting my screen shared here. First, I want to reiterate our gratitude for your work on this. As many have said, we can't do this without you, and we know that you share the goal of making sure that all these families get these really critical tax credits, so thanks again. At ESP, we will be working closely with Code and others to make sure that you all get the resources that you need. So I think it's important for you to know that there's really no wrong door for you to get this help, we are here and available and ready and excited to help you. So at ESP over the next few months, we are available to first help you engage with texting providers. So we know that state and local agencies are in different places, as you've heard on this call, when it comes to texting capacity and technology. So we just want to offer ourselves as a resource to help you navigate that and identify the best steps to help you make your outreach as effective as possible. Second, in states where we have contacts, which is some but not all states, we are available to help you connect with local partners in your area to the extent that that's helpful to you. And third, if you're interested in taking steps towards leveraging benefits cross enrollments, like you heard from the states that have been doing this innovative work on this call, Virginia and Massachusetts and Michigan, we are more than happy to help you work through whatever hurdles you're facing in your states. As Jean said, really cross enrollments are a North Star in this work to automatically identify individuals and families who are eligible and get them signed up without so much burden for both you all as administrators and for them. So we look forward to working together with you all. My contact info is on the slide here, and I'll pass it to Patrick Hain with the National League of Cities. Thanks.
Thanks, Kelly. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. So at the National League of Cities, we represent towns, cities, villages, boroughs, local levels of government. And within my role, I provide technical assistance to local governments related to the Earned Income Tax Credit and other services. At the National League of Cities, we believe that financially stable families make financially stable cities. This is why making a push to connect more individuals to the child tax credit and Earned Income Tax Credit is so important. We've been doing this work for over 20 years, helping cities of all sizes from Hattiesburg, Mississippi to the city of Boston work on making sure that they're thinking about the residents who they don't often reach and partnerships that they can make happen to really have a longer impact locally. We stand ready to help local leaders do this work because we can't wait, and your community can't either. So we would invite any city leaders that are on today's call to reach out to me. My email address is here. I'll be happy to walk through. And also, if you can't figure out who to connect with, we're definitely happy to make that connection to David or Callie or others who we partner with regularly to make sure that you guys don't miss this opportunity. We're very excited about this. I've written extensively on it. We're here to help. You're not alone, and you can do it. So with that, I will turn it over to Rachel Mackey from the National Association of County Officials.
Hi, thank you so much, Patrick. So I'm Rachel. I am the Legislative Director of Human Services and Education at NACO. We're the only national organization representing the 3,069 counties, parishes, and boroughs. And our members are very committed to combating poverty and promoting upstream solutions to intergenerational economic mobility. And that's why we are so passionate about connecting our vulnerable residents with the expanded and regular child tax credit and earned income tax credit. So we've been working a lot with our county members on outreach, but today I'm going to talk about something we've done with the American Public Human Services Association, which represents state and local health and human services agencies. That's a co-branded outreach toolkit that we've developed geared towards state and local HHS agency staff. So we know that 75% of the families at risk for missing out on these tax credits are connected to some form of public benefits, and that HHS agency staff can be really trusted messengers. So we've created a toolkit and a hub that has all sorts of messaging materials, scripts, focus group results that can guide your thinking, state and county spotlights and local spotlights in general, fact sheets and webinars. I'll show you guys what the hub looks like in a second, but we also are available to provide strategy help and other thoughts, and you can contact me at the email address written here. This is also work that elected local officials and county officials can and should be engaging in, so I'm also happy to think through how those folks can use this resource to use their political platforms and other types of messaging opportunities to make sure that all residents are connected. So really quick, I will just show you a quick shot of what the hub looks like. If I can get to it, here it is. So as you can see here, we've got all sorts of state and local spotlights. You can click on these links to go see what states and counties are doing. Lots of resources, plenty of partner toolkits for outreach and more. And we will continue to update this resource, especially as regular tax filing season closes. We'll of course also have connections to the non-filer portal and more. So again, that's rmackey@naco.org for any questions, and look forward to working with you all. And with that, I will kick it back over to Mr. Sperling.
Thank you so much. We've kept you a little longer, but I hope you appreciate that we really wanted to pack a lot in here, both to set the frame, but then also for you to see the actual childtaxcredit.gov website, to see some very tangible examples, and also to see the faces and the email addresses, et cetera, behind people who can help right now. I will tell you, we did a little work group with 16 cities. That URL that Code for America provided, they found so useful. It was a way of actually tracking the impact of the different measures they are doing. We really, so I hope you found this useful, but more importantly, I hope it will motivate you to take action, both now, I think what David said was right, 3 times at least, which is right now before April 18th. Again, when the non-filer is up, and then also as we go on in the summer, letting people know that they can always fully file, as well as the option for the non-filer portal that will be up in May. Also, let us know what you're doing. That can be very helpful for us. We know we've already heard from people from Cleveland to Los Angeles to New York City to Savanaugh to Lodi to Colorado, of things that I could go on they're doing, but let us know. We would like to put out at one point a collection of the different efforts that people are doing to make clear that this is truly a national and ongoing effort. So we will send you an email that will give you some contact information for us, so you can connect with the IGA from the White House, who can connect with all of us. But and just as importantly, I hope you'll connect with the organizations that just were highlighted. They are motivated. We're somehow not supposed to say the word partners, but they're what I would think of as partners in this outreach, which is really bottom up and top down and middle out. It's everything to be effective. So thank you very, very much. And again, I hope you've seen that there is a lot that can be done now before we get to April 18th, and then more that we can do over the summer. We will let you know the date of our second and our third hosting. The second one, again, will focus a little more information on the non-filer. The third one will talk a little more on best practices, on what you've heard is that last mile strategy, that giving the reassurances, particularly because it relates to the IRS, that can make all the difference between whether a family is left out, or a family like Renata's, who is getting the help and assistance they need to raise their child out of poverty, or as President Biden said, raise them with just a little bit more breathing room. So thank you so much for participating. Thank you for hanging on with us a little longer. And we will let you know our second date, and please let us know any information on what you're doing or any questions that you have. Thank you very much to everyone.